Welcome to Ping 24 Updates, your daily dose of what's happening around the world. If you want to stay informed and ahead, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon. The world was stunned by a quiet, official statement, one that would echo across continents and through the halls of power. Beijing accepts Taipei's framework for 50-year truce. The words appeared simple, but their impact was anything but. Newsrooms froze, anchors stared in disbelief, and the world held its breath. For a moment, time itself seemed to stop as the implications sank in. The most dangerous flashpoint on the planet had just been put on ice. The Taiwan Strait, long a symbol of tension, was suddenly a symbol of hope. Crowds in Taipei wept and cheered, overwhelmed by relief and disbelief, while in Shanghai, citizens watched state media in confusion, unsure what this meant for their future. The world had braced for war, yet suddenly, there was peace. Streets that had been tense with anxiety now filled with cautious optimism. This was more than a political agreement. It was a seismic shift in the global order. Alliances, strategies, and decades-old assumptions were instantly upended. For decades, analysts predicted devastation if conflict erupted over Taiwan. Military exercises, war games, and dire warnings had dominated headlines for years. Now, the entire framework of global security was thrown into question. The unthinkable had happened. What happens now? World leaders scrambled to respond, their plans suddenly obsolete. Reports emerged of secret negotiations in neutral locations, Geneva, Stockholm, and even remote islands, where diplomats worked tirelessly behind closed doors. Was this a diplomatic masterstroke or a desperate gamble? Experts debated fiercely, weighing the risks and rewards of such an unprecedented move. The leaders of China and Taiwan had stepped back from the brink, choosing dialogue over destruction, and surprising even their closest advisors. They agreed to a truce, pausing a bitter history that had shaped generations. The signing ceremony was broadcast live, watched by millions. But a piece of paper can't erase generations of mistrust. Memories of past conflicts and betrayals lingered in the minds of many. The world watched, waiting to see if this fragile peace would hold, knowing that history was being written in real time, and that the next chapter was still unwritten. To truly grasp the magnitude of this moment, we must look back through the layers of history, tracing the origins of a conflict that has shaped the destinies of millions. The story of China and Taiwan is not just about politics or territory, it's about identity, memory, and the struggle for legitimacy. The roots of the China-Taiwan conflict stretch deep into the era of the Chinese Civil War, a time when the nation was torn apart by competing visions for its future. On one side stood the nationalists, led by Chiang Kai-shek, determined to preserve the Republic of China. On the other, the communists led by Mao Zedong, promising a new order. Both sides believed they alone could lead China forward. After the devastation of World War II, the Civil War reignited with even greater intensity. By 1949, Mao's communist forces had seized control of the mainland, declaring the birth of the People's Republic of China. Defeated, the nationalists retreated across the sea to Taiwan, where they established a government in exile in Taipei, vowing to one day reclaim the mainland. For decades, two rival governments each claimed to be the one true China, refusing to recognize the other's legitimacy on the world stage. In Beijing, leaders saw Taiwan as a breakaway province, a symbol of unfinished business, and repeatedly vowed reunification, by force if necessary. For many in China, Taiwan's continued separation is a painful reminder of national humiliation and the era of foreign intervention and division. In Taipei, the hope of retaking the mainland gradually faded, replaced by the realities of life on a new island home. Over time, a unique Taiwanese identity began to emerge, one shaped by local culture, democratic values, and a sense of belonging distinct from the mainland. Generations born and raised on the island came to see themselves as Taiwanese, not as exiles or temporary residents, but as a people with their own story. Taiwan built a vibrant democracy, holding free elections and embracing open debate, standing in stark contrast to Beijing's one-party rule. The conflict evolved. It became more than a struggle between two governments. It became a question of self-determination versus territorial claim, of democracy versus authoritarianism. Today, it's no longer just about rival governments, it's about the right of a people to choose their own future, to define who they are. This profound shift in identity now lies at the very heart of the modern conflict, shaping the hopes and fears of a new generation. The conflict's core is sovereignty. Who governs Taiwan? Beijing's One China principle insists Taiwan is part of China, pressuring countries to cut ties with Taipei. Taiwan's view has shifted. Most now see themselves as Taiwanese, not Chinese. The island operates as a de facto independent state with its own government and military. China's military buildup and threats are met by Taiwan's defensive porcupine strategy. The US walks a tightrope, acknowledging Beijing but supporting Taiwan's defense. The Taiwan Relations Act commits the US to help Taiwan defend itself. This strategic ambiguity kept peace but always on the edge. The world watched a dangerous stalemate, hoping it wouldn't tip into disaster. Now that balance has been upended. The Taipei Accords redefine the rules. A 50-year truce, not a final resolution. Both sides pledge non-aggression. China renounces force. Taiwan halts moves toward formal independence. The military terms are sweeping. China pulls back missiles, ceases patrols. Taiwan caps defense spending and halts new offensive missiles. A joint commission with international observers will monitor compliance. Economically, the deal is transformative. Direct links, lower tariffs, and protections for Taiwan's semiconductor industry. Beijing pledges not to interfere with Taiwan's chip manufacturing, a major concession. Culturally, the accords expand educational and cultural exchanges. A cross-strait historical commission will attempt to write a shared history. The goal: build understanding and respect over decades. It's ambitious, but the hope is to replace conflict with cooperation. The truce is a freeze, not a solution, but it's a start. The world is watching to see if it holds. In Taipei, a wave of relief swept through the city, but it was tinged with skepticism. Decades of mistrust and uncertainty run deep in the hearts of many. The memories of past tensions and broken promises linger, making it hard for some to fully embrace the news. Families gathered around their televisions, watching the news unfold with a mix of hope and wariness. Some dared to imagine a safer future, while others quietly wondered what hidden costs might come with this sudden peace. In China, state media quickly declared the agreement a resounding victory for President Xi, emphasizing national strength and unity. Yet online, the mood was far more complex, with heated debates and uncertainty spreading across social media platforms. Some young nationalists felt betrayed by the compromise, voicing anger in the streets and online forums. Others, however, were quietly relieved, grateful that the specter of war had been avoided, at least for now. The US offered cautious praise in public statements, highlighting the importance of dialogue. But behind closed doors, officials scrambled to assess the long-term impact, holding urgent meetings and reviewing intelligence. The deal upends decades of carefully crafted American policy and influence in Asia, leaving many to question what role the US will play in the region's future. Washington, long seen as Taiwan's protector and a key player in regional security, found itself largely cut out of the process, sparking debate among lawmakers and analysts. Allies in Tokyo and Seoul welcomed the prospect of peace, but their relief was tempered by growing worries about shifting power dynamics and the possibility of new regional rivalries. European leaders hailed the triumph of diplomacy, calling it a rare victory for negotiation over conflict and urging all sides to remain committed to dialogue. Global markets soared in response, with oil prices dropping and stock indices jumping as investors bet on stability and renewed economic growth. Around the world, people watched the news with a collective sigh of relief, but beneath the surface, anxiety lingered about what the future might hold. The peace is fragile and the future remains uncertain. Many wonder if this calm will last or if old tensions will soon resurface. The deal's ultimate success or failure will reshape not just East Asia, but the entire world order, influencing alliances and rivalries for years to come. For now, the threat of war has receded, and people can breathe a little easier, if only for a moment. But as the world watches closely, everyone is left wondering what comes next, and whether this fragile peace can truly endure. Why did China agree to a truce now? The answer: mounting internal and external pressures. President Xi faced economic troubles, real estate crisis, debt, and youth unemployment. War would have triggered crippling sanctions and economic disaster. The military calculus shifted after Ukraine. A smaller defender can inflict heavy losses. Taiwan's defenses and the strait's geography made invasion risky and costly. A quick victory was far from certain. A drawn-out conflict could destabilize the regime. Geopolitically, China's aggression had backfired, pushing neighbors closer to the US. Japan rearmed, the Philippines welcomed US forces, and AUKUS gained momentum. China was increasingly isolated. The truce is a strategic pivot. China rebrands as peacemaker, buys time to address domestic issues, and divides US alliances. It's not surrender, it's a calculated pause. Beijing can wait for a more favorable moment. For now, peace is the pragmatic choice. The world must adapt to this new reality. The Taipei Accords are as much about economics as peace. At the center, Taiwan's semiconductor industry, vital to global tech. The deal guarantees protection for Taiwan's chip sector, easing fears of supply chain disruption. Companies like Apple and Nvidia can breathe easier, for now. Economic integration will accelerate, but Taiwan keeps control of its tech assets. The agreement prevents a hostile takeover of key industries. This could create a cross-strait economic powerhouse. For the US, the deal complicates efforts to decouple tech from China. If Taiwan deepens ties with Beijing, America's tech strategy must adapt. The global tech landscape is shifting, and the world is watching. Three futures emerge from this historic truce. First, genuine reconciliation. Decades of peace and exchange build trust, making a peaceful solution possible by 2075. Second, a cold peace. The truce holds, but mistrust and competition persist. Both sides prepare for the future, hoping to tip the balance in their favor. Third, collapse. The deal breaks down, hardliners rise or compliance falters. Conflict becomes likely. The outcome depends on choices in Beijing, Taipei, and Washington. Economic trends, technology, and history's twists will shape what comes next. The accords buy time, not a solution. Will it be healing or just a pause before a greater storm? The stakes are enormous. The world watches, hoping for peace. The next 50 years will decide everything. The fragile peace hangs in the balance. The Taipei Accords may be a turning point in global diplomacy. They show that even the deepest conflicts can be managed with creative compromise. China and Taiwan chose pragmatism over ideology, stability over confrontation. The deal is conflict management, not resolution, buying time for future generations. For the US, it's a challenge and an opportunity. Adapt to a multipolar world, act as facilitator, not enforcer. The Accords' fate rests on trust and continued commitment to peace. If successful, they could inspire solutions elsewhere. The world hopes this gamble on peace succeeds. Diplomacy's path is hard, but not closed. The long watch begins now.